We are live. We want to say good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon to everybody listening on WINNMedia 98.9, to everybody viewing on the social networks, particularly our Instagram, and on the YouTube channel. You're listening to the He Nuh show. And in studios with us, we have a brethren, a brother, Ras Agad. And he's graced us with his presence. Today, we're going to do a deep dive into something that I've always wondered about. And I think Agad is going to give us his insights on equity versus equality. So, just a brief synopsis. In my mind, equity means being fair to each person, dealing with people fairly. And equality means everybody has the same outcome. So you give everybody exactly the same thing. Now, in my mind, equality is problematic in any society. And we see from the male female perspective, sometimes you hear women talking about they wanting equality. But I think for the most part, the argument should be for equity, giving each person what they deserve, what is in their best interest. So, hey God, let's jump right in. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I give thanks again for being here. So,
Yeah, you.
yeah. Right. Well, just as you laid it out, is pretty much the same vibes I would have towards the whole structure of it. Because gender equality is basically something that has been going around in a global sense right now, especially coming out
buzzword.
the UN and all these different places, pushing gender equality. I mean, one of the things is that there seems to be a suggestion that patriarchal systems, governments, and so on, is not the best thing for people. But then we see the world population have risen to over 7 billion people. We see technology on the rise. We see everything basically rising. The only thing that we see might be a little negative is that we may see we see more immorality also rising too in certain corners. So, but when you look at the whole patriarchal system, was it something bad? I mean, we grew up on that. The very religious concept even show men to be the breadwinner in the homes. As a matter of fact, there is one scripture that says a man who cannot support his children and uphold things is considered to be an infidel.
Right.
So imagine the kind of pressure that men would have on them in a religious sense when it comes to the gender system within the society when it comes to religion. So when it comes to gender equality and gender equity, I mean, gender equity, as you laid it out, you fair treatment. Everybody get access to everything. I mean, you work equal pay, opportunities, everything the same. But then the equality, I don't even look beyond just saying outcome, but just look at some scenarios, for instance. How would it be to remove the names of, male men and women in the bathroom, and we just have one bathroom? Would you like your daughter to be there, your young daughter, be there in the bathroom, and a man come in there, basically, showing the private parts and whatever because he going.
Because you're saying that's a form of gender
All
equality.
that's gender equality.
Yeah.
So as you say, it's something that could be chaotic in terms of the outcome. Also, we could see clearly that biologically and culturally would kind of hinge a little bit in the religion, that we are different.
Yeah.
We are different. I mean, when you look at sports, for instance, for all your life and all the history searches have you ever seen that a woman, the fastest woman in the world, is anywhere close to the fastest man in the world?
No.
Have you ever seen, when it comes to like weightlifting, that any woman come close? So we are different physically. Women menstruate, men don't. When women go into some of these things, the hormones come into play and different things and so on. Man got prostate issues. So we are physically different.
So let me ask a question. Because in my mind, I kind of trying to tease out certain ideas. Where do we feel like, or where do you feel like the disparity in gender started initially, where men had more control, let's call it that. So if we go back to the 1930s, 1940s, the masculine were the more dominant gender.
Well,
What do you think was the reason for that? And then we come forward.
let me jump a little even behind that still. When we studied the Willie Lynch letters, we see what they were doing on the plantations to men and women. They would beat women close to death and then, just keep them and say, well, they're a good commodity because they're going to born children.
Yeah.
But they would beat men to death because you only need one man to impregnate thousands of women. But you still need the men them to lift up certain stuff. So they beat the men to death. So what they were doing with the whole concept with the Willie Lynch system, because he took the system and spread it out to all the Caribbean countries who had slaves and also the Americas, because the system worked for the
Psychological control.
Right.
Yeah.
So what they did was beat the manhood out of men, the masculinity out of men, and beat independence in the women. So this is why you see today. Well, I don't know how much it is today like this, but most times a mother would be talking more to her daughter to take care of herself. Don't do certain things. And the son, she just send the son outside to play.
Yeah.
The son do as he like, playing wherever, maybe a mama's boy or whatever the case may be. And the boys don't necessarily get the social warnings from the mother. So, like the mothers are already training the girls to be independent of the men.
Yeah.
And then we see how society run, that a lot of the homes, if not the majority, are run by women. When you look at all the project houses that being given out, a good maybe 90%, maybe 99% owned by women.
But I think that's relational. So that's an effect of certain mechanisms that were put in place, and
Right.
the separation of the masculine and the feminine during
Right.
the time of slavery is one of them things there now that come forward. But in my mind, when I look through it, the way I see it is the masculine has always been more mobile. And when I say more mobile, the masculine didn't have the same physical impediments that the feminine had.
Right.
So there was a point in time where the feminine would have the menstrual cycle,
Right.
which would obviously slow them down. And the feminine had the responsibility of bearing and caring for children.
Right.
Whereas a man didn't have them things there. They didn't have those, I wouldn't necessarily call them limitations, but obviously if you're looking at it from a psychosocial perspective, they would limit your ability to engage because you have other more urgent responsibilities. So that's from the feminine. So then it means the masculine would be the one doing all of the heavy lifting and all of the work and moving forward and earning the money. And the feminine would be in the home. We've gotten to a place now, and I think we've gotten to that place partly because of advances in technology. So you had sanitary facilities now being put in place,
Right.
sanitary pads, birth control. Birth control is a big thing because women now could control their reproductive cycles fully. You have women now who could more fully engage within the workspace. And I feel like because they're now able to fully engage in the workspace, which is an admirable thing, so we ain't trying to knock that part of the thing. But coming out of that, there is this concept that we have lived in a patriarchal society and the masculine has always taken control and no woman within the rights to retake some of that control. You believe in that?
Well, of course, I believe in that. I believe, again, this is the whole idea of gender equity, that fairness and opportunities to all. So, but when you look at the whole system of things, even politically, most of the women who engage in politics were successful. About maybe 99.9% of women who engage in political, being a part of the government itself, has been successful in the move towards politics. A lot of men being failing, even though, men generally has been, as you said, on top of things most of the times. But when women do enter into politics, they are mostly successful.
What do you think that is?
I think because, one, sometimes, like people seeing the same thing over and over again. Sometimes a different view, a different energy might be coming with the woman, and some people, would give it a test run. Like they have some interest in it, and to give it fairness, to stay within the range of equity. I think sometimes the women actually do better than the men.
So, I think for me, the way I always see it is, I think politics is a balance between paying attention to things being developing infrastructure and them kind of energies, and paying attention to people. So, the human resource, which is your country, which is your, your comrades, the people that live with you. And if you look at it, if you look at any metric, women are also more inclined to pay attention to people.
Right, that's why they're more nurses.
Right, and men more inclined to pay attention to things. Yeah. So a man would quicker be an engineer and a woman would quicker be a nurse.
Right, and I was about to say a man would quicker be a contractor,
right,
to deal with construction. A woman would quicker be a teacher, a nurse, a caretaker for homes. But then let's look at some of these realities, though. Speaking about caretaker. As a man, if your mother has reached that age where she needs some care,
right,
would you be comfortable with a man bathing your mother?
You mean convalescent care? Like
Yeah.
when they sit down and they need, okay.
Yeah, would you be comfortable with a man?
No.
Okay. That's why I said let's look at the realities. Also, let me ask this. Knowing that the history of men here has not been the best thing when it comes to, molestations and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Would you prefer a male teacher to teach your your daughter in primary school, knowing the rate of molestations and so that goes on in some of these cases?
No. I mean, if you come across a male teacher, what I would say is, it's not necessarily a preference thing, but it's an issue of you probably might pay more attention to the male teacher.
So it's built into us. It could be culturally, it could be the way were conditioned. But even though, if you put that aside, whether how we were conditioned or the culture was, what about the data that actually shows that men are more into these type of molestations, and men are more violent into domestic issues and so on? The data is showing that clearly. So we can't even say, well, it's just because of how we think. But we have seen and heard enough to know that, sometimes you just can't trust men around certain things. So you'll feel more comfortable with a female, even though the man might be better qualified to do the job.
But and these are realities. So what we're saying here are realities. But if you utter them, you sound sexist. Because if you're saying, oh, boy, I really prefer a female teacher than a male teacher, sound like sexism. It could sound one, egotistical. It could sound misogynistic.
Yeah.
So how do we get around that? Because these are conversations that need to be had, and more time people don't even look through it.
But you see, it could sound all kind of ways, as you say. But it's one word they don't bring, that it sound real. They don't bring it. He'll sound sexist and all kind of other words. But you never hear them say it sound real. Like, this is real. This is what actually happens in our societies. I mean, we're talking about the communities in the Caribbean that basically go through the same thing. So we in St. Kitts, we see this. We hear about the same things in St. Martin.
Yeah, so
we hear about the same things in Jamaica and so on. So exactly. So it's not an isolated situation to one country or anything like that. It's just a certain behavior, of men, and also to show the comfort sometimes of a parent. I'm not even saying, even though I'll ask you the question, I think parents generally, because of that data that shows that men molesting children, and also, we got the rise of homosexuality. I mean, who want to be homosexual? That's their business. But when you go and impose it on young men, we got to call it out. And so you have these mentorship programs that seem to be a cesspool for that.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying that sometimes, as a parent, you'll be more comfortable in certain situation to have a female to deal with certain things, such as taking care of your mother who is going through whatever, and even instructing your daughter at a very young age. Because, as your daughter get older, you expect her, because, you're teaching her certain stuff and so, to take care of herself.
Right.
But when they're that young, you want to be a little more careful how you expose her, give her to people to just do things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, when I think about the gender dynamics, one of the things that I see that's embedded within this equality, equity conversation is, to some extent, there is a push almost to make men feel like there is something wrong in being masculine.
Right. And they don't talk about that.
Right. So there is an inherent wrongness within masculinity. So if you're a dominant male,
Yeah.
they're saying, oh, you're controlling, or whatever adjective they want to use to describe you.
But we also gotta be honest and clear that some men feel like dominance is control, right? Instead of the way masculine energy is to grow your family. But some men would go and dominate to the point where it's actually controlling, where, the family don't got to say.
Like you feel like he should be dominant.
Yeah, they should be dominant in every aspect.
Right.
You know what I mean? And a real man is supposed to grow his family, women and children alike. Because me personally, like, let's say I'm having a conversation with my partner, and she's telling me control. I said, listen, I would never ever try to control you or try to give you answers like tell you like directives, because guess what? Let's say we get youth, and how life go. I might pass on.
I hope you're planning to get some.
and I pass on. You're gonna for you to have like harmony. You're gonna look for somebody to replace that, and that man might be a tyrant. He might not be competent. He might be like just a tyrant to you.
Right.
Right. So I want you to be in fully control of yourself, but we got to have this balance where we could push ideas and have open conversations. And if I have to take the lead on something, I take the lead. If you got to take the lead on something, you take the lead. But we gotta be a balance, right?
Right. But let's do with something you said earlier, like women liking like people more, and men would
Like in
like
things, yeah.
more. You're right. I mean, so that has been tested. That has been tested by social scientists.
Yeah.
And you find if you put down dolls, and you put down trucks, and you put down planes and stuff like that, only in the presence of young boys, they go towards the trucks and the plane, and not so much the dolls. I'm not saying none of them. Probably one or two might go for the doll.
Right.
On the other hand, you put the same things by the young girls, and they go towards the dolls, because again, as you say, women are more interested in people, and men are more interested in things. So we see that at play at very young age. Now the feminist society seem to want to have it go a little different, where they're not speaking about giving it a balanced play. It's like forcing the boys to like dolls.
Right. Right.
And there are people who actually thinking this is a good thing to do.
And for me, and just from my vantage point, I feel like there is this use of the word vulnerability to kind of mask some of the agenda,
Right.
which is to, in my view, in my estimation, weaken men to some extent. No, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with being vulnerable, because you have to be vulnerable in order to grow. You have to be vulnerable
I
with
think
your
it's
family.
human nature.
Yeah.
Right. To be human is to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
We are vulnerable in various
some
ways.
ways, yeah.
But I think that it is a man's responsibility, and I have no regrets about saying this, to demonstrate strength. Because as a man, if you don't demonstrate strength, you can't fully protect your family. You can't fully climb or achieve any of the goals that you want to achieve for yourself.
And I believe too, I strongly believe that women wouldn't trust a man who is,
Who's feminine?
Who's feminine. Always complaining. I feel sometimes like women instinctively know or feel like the complaining space is their own.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because when you start to complaints, it don't typically go well. And if you're a man who's doing that repeatedly, just like the only problems you don't see. But as a man, to me, you got to provide solutions.
Well, look at it this way. I mean, I don't know how much studies has been done, but there definitely is conversations to show that most of the time when you, like women who are feminists or, people who decide they want to be of a different gender and different things, a good percentage of the time their background had to do with some form of something happened, so maybe
With some trauma.
right.
Okay.
And
Sexual trauma, you're saying.
right.
Okay.
And so it's not. I remember at one point that type of lifestyle was considered to be
Taboo.
No, it was like a mental disorder.
Yes.
And then they had them remove that. So
From the DSM.
right. So
Yeah,
it's no
then-
longer a mental disorder. But they had to have good reason to call it a mental disorder. Now, I'll give an example. A 2-year-old child and a 25-year-old man go and molest that baby. Wouldn't it be that the thought process could say, well, something wrong with that man?
Yeah, for sure.
Mentally, something is wrong with that man. Why? Because it's a baby who has not developed anything to draw any sexual energy from the man.
Yeah.
So obviously, all of that sexual energy is inside his head.
Yeah, man.
So he's playing out scenarios. So when somebody of the same gender or sex look at someone of their own kind, and have these feelings, is this not also all in the head?
Well, I mean, I would have to disagree and say that, and not call it a mental disorder, right? And just like the people update data over time,
Right.
so the data of kind of mental disorder might have been wrong. Right?
I think it was more of protest. It was more of protest, and because look at it this way. Well, I mean, okay, so we're talking about this conversation about gender equity and gender equality. Now, and three of us are black men, and the other brethren in there is also black. When the black movement was on the rise to talk about rights, just rights for black people, it gets shut down by this conversation about homosexuality. Yeah, so the black struggle, the black movement, when people moving up to say, well, the black man should be able to get equal pay as the white man doing the same work. That's what was happening. That was going full steam ahead. And as it starting to break down the door to make it so, boom, here comes the whole homosexual talk. And gender equality and gender this and all kind of story. And it just flattened the whole idea about black people achieving like the white
Equity.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're saying that it created a different narrative
Yeah.
to distract.
Distract.
You. Okay.
So, so when you say you disagreed about the system there, but you were talking about the data, that's why I said brought in that, because in running some of these tests and they're saying they're upgrading data, a lot of the time that data is not data by real surveys, because something you got to know, who did they survey? Did they survey black people? Was it done by race? Was it done by a certain class of people? Who exactly did they survey?
But we could say that about all information that we get.
That is true.
Yeah.
That is true.
But
So I think we should question when things are done, we should always question that. Are you putting the people, like for instance, if go back to the political portion that we had earlier, if you're going to talk about agriculture, who you going to survey? You're going to survey the people who benefiting off of importing, or you're going to survey the farmers who believe that they should have a foot in the door for each supermarket? So you have to question, like, who did that survey cover?
But when I say like updated data, because we go back in history and time and stuff like that, they even had us as black people on a different type of survey, right? And we, as black people, they had to update that information because
Well, one third of a human being.
You see what I'm saying? So, I believe that it's like homosexuals and so. I don't believe that's a mental disorder. I just think that I don't. That's their thing, you know what I mean. So live your life. I got no control over that.
Well, I'm not saying it is. I was just saying what was.
But the
what,
data, but the data
right,
had before, but they updated
right.
that. I wouldn't say that
So-
that was a mistake.
I'm not saying it is, and I'm not saying it is not.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a different
Conversation.
altogether.
So my view on a lot of these things is, I think everything in creation kind of almost happen on a cycle, right? And things go at a particular pace, given a particular time frame. Because if you look at it, if we even taking that earlier argument about gender identity and the homosexuals, we've come to a place now where, as human beings globally on the planet, we get to a place where we feel like we're more civilized. We have a greater understanding of things, and we need to implement this change. So, with the gender dynamic, that was it, and we're now at a place where we feel like, oh, we're more civil, we're more socialized. So, we could look at this differently. It's the same thing with the race issue. There was more oppression between the races in terms of, well, I can't even say between the races, because the black people had the most oppression, blacks and Jews, but and then so now we come around to gender, we're male, female, and we feel like, okay, females supposed to be able to do the same thing that a male can do, and males and females are equal. And the argument that I am making is a male and a female aren't equal.
We're not biologically equal.
Right, we're not biologically equal. There is a balance,
Yeah.
and women, in a lot of ways, are superior to the masculine,
Right.
and in a lot of ways, the masculine is superior to the feminine. But
Right.
it's across a spectrum.
It's to work together. Remember, I gave the nut and bolt scenario.
Right.
Sometime, I think it was the last conversation, where each one, they're equally important.
Yeah.
For everything.
You just bring something different
Right.
to the table.
It's just that you come as a bolt and you come as a nut, and when you come together, you make things happen.
Yeah.
But so within the genders, we have clear lines of delineation, whereas, okay, you reference physicality. The masculine bone structure is different. The
muscle
muscle
mass,
structure,
yeah.
the muscle structure, the muscle mass is different. So obviously, for across a wider cross section of people, the masculine is going to be faster, stronger,
Right.
more powerful, more intimidated in terms of physicality. The feminine might be a little bit more petite, a little bit more gentle, right? A little bit more subtle. But that doesn't necessarily say that a man is better than a woman.
Oh, of course not.
A woman has different traits that they bring to the table. Now, if you're looking at things like within the family, what does the woman bring to the table? The woman creates a balance that a man could never create. Because in child rearing, children need a certain amount of love and attention, right? And the average man can spend 3 hours just babying up and playing up. The average man don't do that.
But outside of the home too, like I think women kind of lead in school and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like in terms of in the mental space, and it's because
Yeah, for the most part, they make better educators,
Yeah.
and it's just because they're more compassionate. I feel women are more
Right.
compassionate than the masculine.
Right, and the thing is, you find that, like in our society here, in the school system, the teachers are like 99.9% female.
Yeah.
And that in itself is quite troublesome to some degree. And also, when you look at the dropout rates of students, a high percentage are male,
Yeah.
right? And so, to me, some of the things that we seem to be fighting for is useless, and the things that we should be fighting for, we don't talk about them.
So what should we be fighting?
We should be fighting for educating our youths equally across the board and giving them equal opportunities. The same gender equity we're talking about, they should always have a fair shot. Let's look at how this is not so. All the government departments, every single one, is dominated by women. All. Is that fair? Someone might say, well, the guys didn't apply. But we don't know that. When you look, again, we even talk about the project houses. Now, I understand why it's good to give the women the houses. But why is it that it's so high? I mean, it's so wide where most women actually own these houses. I mean, when you look at the really large palaces that we have around St. Kitts, a lot of times they're owned by male. Maybe I probably need to research that a little deeper though. But a lot of the big houses that we see owned by male.
Right.
But then when it comes to the project houses, like female have all of those. One of the push that I've seen is that there's this push to push women into politics. And it seems like they don't understand women are already in politics. And as I mentioned, and also being successful in the move in politics. But you have more men. So what I'm saying now, why fight for that when you have a bigger fight on your hand where you have a lot of young men on the street don't have no profession? Why aren't we schooling them to a point where our tax money would pay for them to at least an associate's degree in something? Why don't we change up the school system so that you don't just done with school at fifth form, but you just continue and you go as far as getting an associate's degree? Why aren't the high schools then maybe on the level of maybe, say, the CFBC? Where, so what I'm saying is that let's educate the youths then, make sure that they are marketable by, forcing it that they, at least when they leave school, they leave with a degree.
Right, but our conversation leads us into a different rabbit hole, because from my perspective, within the education system, there is this focus on the sciences and theoretical subjects. So the maths, the English, the biology, all of these things. And we see it's not necessarily openly discouraged, but agriculture and things like woodwork and metalwork and these types of subjects, these skills training, they don't have the same level of preference, the same level of dominance within
And you go back
curriculum.
to the female gender presence in the schools like that, because women are not attracted to those things. Women are more attracted to academical type stuff. They're more attracted to the fact that you could be a lawyer and a doctor and an accountant and stuff like that. Women are more attracted to that. So women are not attracted to woodwork, metalwork, plumbing and stuff like that. And so this is why I say we fight in the wrong fight. So sometimes to fight for whether or not we're gonna have male and female in the bathroom, or we're gonna push through some kind of gender policy, not addressing a lot of things. That system of education that you just laid out there have a lot of issues. Not many skills has been like pushed for. It's not being promoted by the school itself. Because remember, a teacher definitely can, by default, impose her personal vibes on the youths.
Yeah.
So, and she may not even know that she's doing it. So you find, I've heard remarks to the point where teachers are telling children, you better do your work, else you might find your hand in the dirt, meaning you might end up planting food.
Yeah.
But planting food is the best thing to do.
Right.
But here it is that a teacher is putting that in a kind of demeaning kind of way to say that if you plant food, you ain't really into society in any kind of upscale category or anything like that.
So then what that says to me is the greatest gender disparity happens in the school. Because if you don't have the equity,
Right.
if you don't have the equality within the subject, the skills training, because when you just analyzed the whole topic, what came to my mind is if the schools created programs that fed and nurtured a youth's urge, a youth's desire to be a carpenter,
Right.
or to learn any skill, 5 years, 10 years from now, he could have been the best carpenter and had his own carpentry business. And the feminine who chose to be an accountant or a doctor or a lawyer, she found him acceptable because he has a
Right.
profitable carpentry business.
Right.
So, you know what I mean? They could link up. She's the accountant, he has the carpentry business, and everything good. But because the schools don't push these skills
They don't push
training,
these
which
things.
young males are more inclined to pay attention to, we have this disparity.
Right.
Where the young masculine just ain't paying attention to school, because unless you love technical drawing, or you love geography, or you love math, you're going to be failing out of school.
Right.
Yeah, so they need more like apprenticeship programs. Yeah.
Yeah. So you see, well, the thing is, in everything should be, as you say, be taught equally at the school level, number one. So you find, don't just wait until, because I do work with national skills, and the students that would come around here would be students who either not behaving well, not doing well in school, or something of that nature. So they're not sending the A students to learn skills.
Right.
Now, they keep saying that they're going to change that. We're not seeing it happening. And if you ask them, they'll tell you clearly this is their plan and what's not. But we're just not seeing it. So, but even so, what about those who would have, come out of school 2019, 2020, 2021, and who are going to come out this year? The male who are not marketable for the workplace. And the workplace don't have to be just St. Kitts. We're talking about the region.
Right.
And then maybe international too. So we have a lot of young men who are not marketable. So this is why now, as I mentioned earlier, when you look at the government departments, there is predominantly female manning the stations. So you find, when you look at the construction sites now, is men manning those stations.
And if they can't get a job, then they fall into crime.
Right. They can't get a job. They got to come take something off of your car, break your house out. I'm not saying that they should do that.
Yes.
But I'm saying that there should have been programs put in place to allow them to have, some sort of skill, not just to say, well, you can just call them up because you have a house building. You can call them up to make some cement.
Right.
Or you can call them up to lift up some board. They should have some kind of degree in doing what they're doing.
But one of the most glaring realities for me is I had some interactions with the prison. Mm-hmm. And in those interactions, I saw the greatest evidence of genius, God. I saw brethren in the prisons making backpacks out of towels. Okay. I saw men creating bookshelves and bed frames, works of art. Mm-hmm. The ability to sculpt and craft, and because they have nothing else to do. And obviously, with the limited rehabilitation programs that they implement in the prison, these men pour all of the energies into this thing here, whatever the skill is. And you see it there. You have guys that go in the prison and technical drawing or wherever it is, wherever they had aspirations to be when they were youths, because now they have no worldly distractions, because obviously you're in confinement.
Right, so the skill come out.
Right, and you have an outlet, so the creativity come out. Yeah. And when I tell you art and carving and poetry and all of these different things, and it made me wonder, why don't we pay attention to these things before these guys get to this stage?
Right, and I've been in the prison situation too with the Men's Council, and I've seen some of what you say you saw. Also, take note also of the level of intelligence.
Oh yeah.
That is locked behind that door.
Articulation, man.
So the thing is, all we do is look at the fact that they're in prison. We don't ever look to see what are some of the reasons why they did what they did. We also don't even seem to want to have alternatives to going in prison. So sometimes, like for instance, why somebody should be in prison because they smoke some weed?
Yeah.
Why somebody should be in prison because they thief a piece of bread?
Yeah.
You understand? You need alternatives. You can't go put somebody who smokes some weed or thief a piece of bread between a murderer, or somebody else who probably dealing with some hard crime. Because what happened now is that soft crime person have to now become like that hard crime person
to survive.
In order to survive in there.
Right.
And then they have to come back out now and demonstrate that hardness that they probably learned there. So I think these are things that we have to look into, and even while being on that note, this is also showing some of the difference between the genders, because when you look at the amount of male in prison and the amount of female in prison, there's almost no conversation about that in terms of the fact that you have hundreds of male in the prison, and maybe you could count on your fingers in terms of female in prison. So right there we see there is a problem. Mm-hmm. So why aren't we pushing? This is why I say we're fighting the wrong battles. We should be fighting to not have the youngsters go to prison. because a lot of them in there, they are very intelligent, very resourceful, very skillful, you know, and they're just behind there, you know, with all that talent going to waste. And again, it seemed to be a situation where once a black man have a key, it becomes a problem, because a lot of the things that we're doing here in St. Kitts and in the Caribbean, when you listen to the Black Conscious Movement in America, the things that they are hoping for or speaking towards getting, we have. They talk about your own schools,
Right.
your own government, your own education system. We have all of that. And look at what we're doing with it.
Well, we still beholden, right? even though we have them, I mean, control and ownership is two different things.
That is true. That is true.
So I mean, with the prisons here and stuff like that, would you think that okay, like say a petty crime type thing, they should have like different levels to the prison, right?
Yeah, definitely. Because again, I mean, if somebody went and maybe stole something from a store, something to eat, especially something to eat,
Yeah.
that's different to breaking in a bank and going with some cash.
Right. Or some money.
Or some money.
Yeah.
So this system that we have here, they don't have no levels, right? Is everybody just mixing?
Well, I think it's a subject. Yeah, it's a subject of economics. They don't have the space to segregate persons. So
In this one prison, but if we invested in, like, so let's say they invested in a prison and put it somewhere like up in the hills or something.
They have plans to do that, and when I heard about the money that they were putting aside to do that, I thought to myself, why not take half that money to put programs in place to at least to deal with mitigating programs?
yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
And we talk about the programs, and not just even the programs that would help, is even the mindset, like with the teacher telling that
Right.
student, you can find your hand in the dot.
Right.
That shouldn't be looked down upon. As
Right.
because these trade jobs, right? If all this technology going, is these trade jobs is what can save us, you know?
Man, as Sankofa said last week, 3 islands. But I ain't even gonna put it in gender now. I'm gonna put it in the academics and the skillful. You have a island, you put all the academics over here.
Yeah,
All the
the
doctors
lawyers,
and
the scientists.
all of them over there. And over on this other island, all the skilled people, the farmers, the plumbers,
The carpenters,
the
yeah.
carpenters, everybody over there. You visit that country in 20 years. Over here, I don't know where you're going to find, right? But over here, you're going to find a
Advancement.
thriving system, economy, society at work, well built upon what's not. Because you need people to build roads, you need people to deal with your electricity,
People
run
to
your
hunt.
plumbing, you know? So the skill, I guess, maybe come from what you mentioned earlier about like the idea of slavery, you know, in the plantation and what's not. So some people might see that like skill is something lesser than, you
That's
know?
exactly what it was, because in essence, sometimes as black people, we tend to kind of, especially coming out of the slavery system, to chase what what Massa had, and Massa had
Right.
education,
Right.
and we were in the fields,
Right.
But with that chasing, like it's like, why can't I have it? So when you get it, you know, you kind of miss some parts of that.
But I think that's one of the biggest motivator of Afro-Caribbean and just Afrocentric people on a whole, is we chase these metrics of advancement. So whatever make it look like we're doing good, we chase that.
Yeah.
You know?
They do that in school, actually.
Yeah.
They do that in school.
And they don't tell you the truth, you know, like most people who go to college and they come back with a loan, right? And then they go work for somebody, and let's say they make $50,000 a year. And then this guy who was getting all F's in school, who becomes a tradesman, probably could be making $50,000 a month
One job.
and one
Right,
job.
Right.
Right, but they don't tell the truth about that. Like, they won't say that having a trade skill could take you around the world. Because once you have a trade, you could survive anywhere in the world, because somebody must want something done.
Well, on that note, too, I would just like to add this. Probably should have added earlier when we were talking about like the schooling. We have certain professions that seem to be in demand here that is not available, right? And like, for instance, engineers.
Right.
When we're doing certain large projects, we have to import help, engineers and so on, doctors and so on. One of the things that I think that we should be doing is the areas that seem to be weak in terms of manpower. Try to give scholarships for some of those positions. I mean, in the meantime, yeah, you bring in the help for a time, but on contract, of course, and you train your people. So when your people come back, you don't have to import these type of help.
And if you bring in the help to you, you gotta bridge the gap between the helping somebody local and connect them,
Yeah.
so they work hand in hand.
Because look, the other day, I mean, on this radio station here, I don't know if I got vexed, but they were interviewing the new CEO for tourism and what's not a local person. The person who was there before, not a local person. Why aren't local people manning these positions? You understand? So we seem to have this kind of complex where we figure that people from elsewhere is better than us.
Yeah. Foreign
And
is better.
Foreign is always better. When you look at, I mean, I used to work with furniture. I still do work with furniture. And I remember before Coates and so came to St. Kitts, well, to do higher purchase with TDC and them, you had to be like middle class when it comes to income. You couldn't be a poor person because you had to make a heavy down payment, and then the weekly or monthly pay was so high that it was not really affordable for poor people. Courts came, and then all that they changed. But we used to make furniture. I used to work with the admirals, and we make all type of furniture. People don't want to buy local furniture that is made out of real wood.
Mm-hmm.
They prefer to buy something that is made out of compressed board, that if rain touch it,
Expands.
Well,
mash up.
And break apart.
But it come back to the same thing,
Yeah.
metrics.
So we got this thing like we just love to interact with. Once you have an accent or a different skin color, you seem to be by default in a better position for a job. And even well, as a Rasta man, even to be a Rasta man already, you don't lose some points. Right? It ain't got nothing to do. Some people like to bring up the homosexual talk about their disadvantage. Disadvantage where? The only people that are disadvantaged right now in society are like Rasta people. So and it is kind of looked upon that all Rasta people are supposed to be entrepreneurs, like working for themselves. They either have to be doing farming or something or whatever the case may be. When they see a Rasta man in a certain position, it's like surprising.
And not just the Rasta too, but even people having locks. Like, I mean, now that's being accepted. But
As
before
long-
that was a problem.
Right, as long as you look like, if you don't even have to run the locks. You walk with a rag that have the heights, green and gold,
Yeah.
already you're at a disadvantage. You put on one of these, already you're at a disadvantage. But you come with if you come with an accent and a different skin color with the same heights, green and gold and the locks, your disadvantage move up. Like, you're no longer at a disadvantage, you now have like a good opportunity just because you have an accent and come with a different skin color.
Well, that come out of the same Willie Lynch theory.
Right, so these are the fight that we need to fight. These are the things that we need to fix in our society.
And we talked earlier, we go back a little bit, we talk about the nurturing and so with men and women is different and stuff like that. But even with the equity, sometimes we need to, like, for custody battles and stuff like that.
Right.
Like, something automatically goes towards
The feminine.
The feminine.
Yeah.
But I agree with that though.
Why are the feminine should
Yeah,
have the
No, but not automatically. You know. Sometimes I think that we need to do some little background checks and
I
know.
don't
need
know.
to.
I think it should be case specific.
I agree
So-
with you. I agree with you.
I think as a general rule, or as a generality, I can't even say a general rule, as a generality, women are better caregivers when it comes to children because women are more dedicated to the school business and the different dress up days for schools and so.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, the feminine would quicker go through that. You know, they find more joy in doing those things, career there and all of these things. But I feel like you have individual cases where a mother, and I say a mother being the feminine that has born a child, sometimes some of them just don't have the maternal instinct.
Let me get real with this though.
Yeah.
A woman, you'll not hear child pregnant for the mother.
Mm.
Okay.
You'll not hear
yeah.
child pregnant for the mother, but you will hear child pregnant for the father.
I hear that. But you
That's
see,
real. That's real.
But so you have specific incidences, but then what about we have systems that have been put in place, right? So we have different organizations that should be paying attention to these issues and making rulings or acting as an intermediary. They have some intervention. So you have, let's take for instance, gender affairs or social welfare. If you see a case where a man, and you could do a social assessment on the father. So there's a man and a woman, and the woman is abusive for whatever reason. The child goes to the hospital with, let's say, a broken rib, and the father determines he wants the child. He is in a position financially to support that child. He has demonstrated socially, just through his engagements and things, that he is a upstanding citizen. Now, I hear what you're saying, he's competent. I hear what you're saying about the darker side of the father engagements. And you have some men who are just dark like that. But there are some fathers that would give the all. Take the shot off of the back, and I consider myself to be one of those fathers.
I'm one of those too.
Right. So then, in those cases where, let's say you're a young man and you're interacting with a woman, you don't have the knowledge or the wisdom to pay attention to certain cues, to see who she is as a person. And by the time you get to your own overstanding now, the youth maybe about 8, 9, right? You're done fully formed, you're done coming to your masculine, so you're supporting yourself. But the mother has now displayed who she is as a person as well. She has no ambition, nothing going on with her really, and your child getting advantage. It's difficult for you as a father, as that father in that particular case, to go to the social welfare, to go to anybody, any of these intervening bodies, and say to them, listen, this woman ain't taking care of my child, and I want my child for myself. Even if you declare that you don't want any child support, it doesn't happen. Right. You go to court and it's a long drawn out process, and they still determine that the mother should have the child.
Right.
And that's a flawed system in my view.
That is so.
Yeah, I get where, you have some men who they're dark and they can't control their carnal impulses and all of these weird things happen. And they should be handled in a dreadful manner. I fully support that. Okay. But I do believe that you have some men who have to just sit in silence or sit off at a distance and watch their children suffer, and it shouldn't happen.
I mean, there's also the cases too of you would see in social media sometimes, let's say a woman and they're having like a domestic dispute. If the woman make enough noise and then they call the law, and the law come, even if she's the one instigating the domestic disturbance, right? They will go with the man before they go with her.
Of course. But that also in even that same situation, even if the police don't come, but both persons made reports about the incident on different occasions, of course. They ain't really listening to the man. Matter of fact, they're not got. I don't know if they actually does write down the man report. But once the woman come, they would sit her down, pay attention, and write every detail that they can about the incident. The man come to make a report, maybe about the same case. He's the laughing stock. These are some of the things that need to change, and they're not going to change overnight. So this is why I say that while, we hear on the radio the other day, they've been pushing this talk about passing a gender equality bill. I don't know if any of you heard it.
No, I didn't.
All kind of things, and I've read the policy. The policy is kind of weird in itself. Does not seem to speak to any form of equality, but seem to speak more to women empowerment.
Right.
And I have no problem with women empowerment, but don't disguise it under a gender equality agenda. That to me was the situation that was there, and it's being pushed by the same people who are supposed to be taking care of the fairness of parents and children in homes and so on. So a lot of these things need to be looked into. So again, go back to what I was saying, we just fighting the wrong battles.
Yeah, because I feel like when we pay attention to some of the social ills, we pay attention to more time the men who aren't doing their part.
Right.
And the men who are doing their part, they become invisible. So there is a group of men. There's a cross section of men who don't know what they're supposed to do. You know what I mean? The man them just worthless. They ain't supporting their children. They round the place getting everybody pregnant. It's a bunch of things. They're always across by the courthouse on a regular basis. And that has become the dominant narrative. Oh, man ain't no good, all man is dog. We hear these things. And what I'm saying is, if that is what we're paying attention to, that is going to be the reality. If we're talking about attracting certain things within the society, I feel like we need to lift up the brethren them who doing the right thing, the man them who actually supporting the children, the man them who paying attention to the youths them in a meaningful way, and trying to create guidance, because you need that example as well. Whereas, okay, it's all well and good to bonfire and the weasel them, the man them who ain't doing what they're supposed to do. But where is the conversation about the men who are doing what they're supposed to do? Because they should be the model for the youths them that coming up. Because if you're telling me this is the argument, if we're going to pay attention to the man them who going to violate the daughter and get the daughter pregnant, and that is the dominant narrative, yeah, he deserve what he deserve. We ain't going against that. But there must also be we pointing out the father who raising his daughters them, and they come up to be productive females and they don't have any trauma issues. We gotta look at it too, because a young man could take a pattern off of he, and that's the pattern that we want to, yeah.
But you just said something there, and when you say he get what he deserved, there's really nothing in the law doing anything about that. I mean, a man could just impregnate the daughter, and as long as she's to age, there's no legal issue.
Yeah, me know that.
There's no legal issue. They're doing it all the time. You ever hear anybody get locked up in saying it's to impregnate the daughter?
Well, I haven't specifically heard about them kind of stories there, but I mean, that's a sick man.
Right, and these are the things, to me, when you don't have no law guiding that, it just becomes something just there. So to me, the law could act as a deterrent to some level.
Yeah, we
You know?
we definitely need harsher penalties for sexual crimes, for sexual violence. We need harsher penalties. Like, I feel like I don't know what the statute of limitations is, what the penalties are for like things like rape.
There's not a lot. There's apparently there's more social talk than laws when it comes to sexual stuff and even domestic issues.
Yeah, well, the
There's
social
more
talk. But if the social talk ain't gonna teeth, it's ineffective.
Ineffective, but somehow still, maybe they're still looking at your social standing to see, maybe, you might want to feel shame and them kind of, which don't really mean nothing.
No, that mean
Because
nothing.
at the end of the day, you need some sort of disciplinary action involved in order to serve as some form of deterrent.
Yeah, man, a minimum of 20 years.
Because, look, we got a lot of mix-up things. The age of consent for
16.
intercourse is 16.
Yeah.
The age to vote is 18.
18.
The age to get a driver's license is 18. So
Drinking,
some people, drinking don't have no age. That's the funny thing, drinking have no age. Well, purchasing alcohol is at 18 as well.
Yeah.
But drinking have no age. So you could be 5-year-old with your bottle of Hammond in your mouth. That is only a moral issue. It's not a legal issue.
So let me ask you another question, right? Based on something we were talking about before, back to the equality and equity, right? How do you feel when you hear like women, especially in our culture as black people, screaming independent woman, they don't need no man?
Well, we see a lot of lonely women who got some problems. Yeah, we see a lot of lonely women who have this fight. I think they just need a little counseling. Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't feel like they see there's anything wrong.
No.
It's nothing wrong. That's just the thing. It's nothing wrong. It's just that
They're kind of lonely.
they're the ones not contributing to the sustainability of the human race going forward. Because left to them, they live by themselves, stay by themselves, lonely and dead.
Our relationships is about
No contribution.
It's interdependency, and not just that. You can be independent on your own, but once in a relationship set, then it should be interdependency.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, like anything else, I feel like the relationship between the masculine and the feminine is a balance.
It's supposed to be a
Yeah,
balance. It should always be.
Yeah, you need the male, you need the female, and we all have a part to play. We all have contributions that need to be made. Anyway, you choose to look at it. You know, I mean, the man needs to do what he needs to do. But this is a deeper discussion, and we've come to the end of the show. So I want to say to everybody that has been listening, thank you for tuning in to WINNMedia 98.9. This has been the He Nuh show. And remember to comment on the YouTube or on the Instagram. Have a good week. Good evening.
Yeah, bless it all.
One, two.
You found the sound 98.9.